What's going on, guys? Ponyline here. Last week I was flown up to Gamescom by EA, where I was able to get early access gameplay of Battlefield 5 and what you'll be seeing in the upcoming beta. So to start with, the only map that we were able to play was Rotterdam on Conquest, and this means that it was a close quarters map. The only things that you were able to have access to were the tank as well as light vehicles, but there were no planes, things that I really needed to see as improvements coming from the alpha phase. So besides that, let's get into some key points. To start with, I was playing in a squad with Ravik, Music, and Thick44. So Ravik being very similar in ideas and things that they like to do for fun, we tried to launch vehicles right off the bat. And unfortunately, as you can see, once again, no changes were made. And to be honest, I don't think any changes are going to be made. So I don't really have any hopes that EA is going to make any changes on this aspect. I don't think it's really part of their focus, their core focus, which I really think it should be, no offense. It's a part of the game that's been around for a very long time. Going on to another point, let's get into the vehicles and adjustments they've made since the alpha. So I enjoyed playing the alpha in the sense that the mechanics that they added to the game were nice. Things such as having to go ahead and resupply yourself with ammo and health, not having full regen health, pretty much the weapon recoil being something that you can actually learn, not something that's just randomized, not RNG. But some of the things that they adjusted in this, I don't really know why. So for starters, the medic class. In the alpha, the medic class had a combined mix of the Gewehr, and you also had the MP40. So you had close range weapons mixed with mid to long range, and that pretty much was a good balance. It allowed the medic to go ahead and engage in long range fights as well as have an MP40 for close range. And as a result, it was a very balanced class. But in this build, they decided to go where it had nothing but SMGs. So we had the EMP, the Sten, you had the Suomi, and the MP40. All four guns that were available were all SMGs. Now, it was good for this map because this map didn't have too many encounters or engagements where you were mixed at mid to long range. So the close range SMGs, they did fine for this map. But what happens when we get to bigger maps and we end up having a medic class that can't really engage in open field scenarios? It makes it to where the medic class is pretty much contained to only being useful in certain scenarios, which I don't really like. Other things to note with the medic class was that the gadgets. They put on pretty much a grenade launcher for the medic class as well as many other classes, but this doesn't have any effect towards vehicles, it seems like. Now, I get a tank has heavy armor, but it should at least do a bit of splash damage or minimal damage, but it does none at this point in time. Other things to note was they took out the syringe needle. So if you were someone like Ravik and you wanted to go around and stab people with a needle, you couldn't do that in this build. I don't know if it's coming back. And some of the confusion that was brought by this as well is it was confusing to try to throw a medic pack out, as well as an ammo pack, to be honest. So some of these changes were a bit confusing, and I guess we're going to have to wait to see where we're going to be going with this. But the medic class, if they can just bring back a balance of some of the semi-automatic weapons, whether it be a Gewehr, whether it be the M1, it would make the class much more suitable, and it will pretty much have longevity for the game. All right, so let's get back into the next class, which is the Assault class. Now, the Assault class, of course, still had the STG, but instead of having any other weapons that were automatic, everything was semi-automatic. You had the Gewehr, you had the M1, and you had the Smiley. And I feel like if you mix some of these, and you put an SMG on the Assault class, and you take some of the semi-automatics, and you put them over into the medic class, that will be the best balance for the game. Now, for the weapons, the M1 was a really fun gun to use. It only had 10 rounds in a mag, but you could spam it as fast as you want. So if you could keep your aim on a target, you could do quite a bit of damage. The Smiley, on the other hand, was a much slower rate of fire. But I enjoyed the semi-automatic weapons. The things I didn't like were the sights. The reflex sight was not very good. It was too dark. It was hard to see your target. And on top of that, it was hard to balance with the map because sometimes the map was very bright. Sometimes it was dark. You had all these elements within the map, such as birds flapping around. And so you had these clutter effects. But if they could just fix the sights, which they're going to, it'll be much more balanced. But going back into gadgetry for the Assault class, obviously they took a note from the Alpha. Tanks were getting destroyed in the Alpha, and that was a multitude of reasons that led to that. One was the tank was always spotted, and therefore everybody knew where to go and how to attack it and the best way to approach that scenario. But in this build, tanks dominated, and there was a reason for that. They took the assault class, and they made it to, instead of having two different gadgetry selections that you could do where you could have Panzerfaust and having a mine or dynamite, you had everything in one slot. You had Panzerfaust, you had dynamite, and you had mines as only one selection, and you only got 2 rockets to boot when you actually spawned. And that led to being able to not take out a tank. Unless if you had 3 people, even if you had 2 people spawn in with a Panzerfaust, you couldn't take out a tank with both of you hitting the tank with all of your shots. So obviously they took note of the tanks getting wrecked in the alpha, and they kind of overdid it. So I think they need to find a balance there. On a note for the vehicles, they felt a lot smoother in this build than they did in the alpha. Tanks felt stronger, they felt sturdier, more smooth going over terrain, and even the light vehicles also felt great to go ahead and drive around, even when hitting potholes, boxes, things of that nature. It was still a smooth ride. So they did a nice improvement on that. The thing I'm most worried about though is the planes. I wasn't able to see a conquest build on a map like we were supposed to, where we were able to try to play the gameplay with airplanes again, because we all know that in the alpha the planes were absolute garbage. And so it still has me extremely worried about the state of the game. So I'm actually really happy to find out that EA is delaying the game, because I do think they need all the time they can to fix and correct and smooth out all the things such as this, because the planes are the things I'm really worried about. If they can do what they're doing right now with the vehicles, mix it in with good ground play like they've been doing so far, which they still need to balance, and then get good airplay, you have a good product on your hands. But until we are able to see that, I'm a bit worried. And I'm still also sad because we don't have vehicle launching or any good physics, sandbox physics that Battlefield used to implement. So for the assault class, I mean, I hope they balance it out with not just having the STG and the carbines. I hope that they can do a mix with the medic class, and then the support class. Support class felt great. Now, it used to be that the Bren and the other gun, I think it was the MG, within the alpha build, it was pretty much almost mandatory for you to go ahead and put a bipod down for the MG. The Bren you could run around a bit, but it wasn't the greatest. In this build, they had 2 weapons that were great for running around that reminded you of Battlefield 1 with the bar. And that was the FG42 and the KE7. The FG42 I think was by far the best of all the guns within the build, especially because the sight for the AA sight, unlike in Battlefield 1 where you had that circle reticle right in the middle, this is just a cross, and it's very easy to see and use. Fast shooting guns, low capacity magazines, meaning that you can only engage so many targets, but it allows for people to use a support class much more aggressive than they were able to in the alpha. So I think they did a good job with implementing other weapons there. They might need to tone it a bit down here and there. Now the class that got the most affected by this build by far was the Recon class. Right now I don't think it's in a good state. I'm sure that Stod and a lot of other people that are aggressive recons or just snipers in general have already talked about this. You had the Car 98, you had the Enfield, and you also had a DMR that was just broken right now. Now obviously it's going to get fixed, but in the meantime it was basically just an abused weapon for this build. It was a 2-shot kill no matter what, as long as you hit him in the chest and above. Sometimes at certain ranges you could get a 1-shot headshot, whereas certain guns like the Car 98 would be a 2-shot bolt action, and sometimes it could even be a 3-shot bolt action. The Enfield was the same scenario, and for some reason I feel like the scope that they put for the long range scope on guns such as, or for any of the snipers, it took much longer to zoom in than it used to. So I don't know how I feel about that, but I feel like the Recon's in a state that's not really good right now. So besides all this, my pretty much overall conclusion to the build is it's still too soon to see or to give a really good opinion on. The beta is going to be coming out this next week, in which place I will be making videos about that, as well as I will be doing some streaming as much as I can for the beta build. I don't know how long the beta build is going to be going for with this new update in regards to the game being delayed. Hopefully it goes long enough to get enough playing time, and hopefully we get to see things such as air combat, because like I said, it's in a state where I'm most scared for air combat. So the ground game feels good so far. They've made some good improvements with the tanks and the light vehicles, but like I said, there's a lot of things that still need to be tweaked around and to be seen. So with that being said, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys found the information useful, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section. And I will be seeing you guys in the beta this upcoming week. So until then, guys, have a great one.